What's going on? How are you guys today? We're going to go over some supplements I've been using and experimenting with recently, what their natural alternatives are, as well as an antimicrobial and enzyme protocol if you're having some sort of gut issues. So throughout the most of my carnivore diet history, I did not use any supplements. I used organs and whole foods as supplements. More recently, I found it necessary to add things like copper to my diet and a couple of other things for various reasons. So here on the left, which I won't touch on too much, is glutathione, ubiquinol, vitamin C powder, and we also have NAC and acetylcysteine, which I'll show you in the antimicrobial protocol. These are antioxidant vitamins, and I don't usually take these. I haven't taken these for a month or two. If I go down to the city, if I have a really bad headache, if I have to stay awake for a car ride, you have glutathione, which is an antioxidant produced in the body. You have ubiquinol 200, which is an antioxidant B vitamin, very important, coenzyme Q10. And then we have the acerola cherry powder, the source of vitamin C. But vitamin C can increase iron absorption, and this can give you insomnia. So again, just used for antioxidant purposes if you're in a high state of inflammation, if you have a headache. You can experiment with various amounts. It's safer to stay lower at the start and then taper up. Copper, I've been doing 3 milligrams with every single meal. You could do 2 milligrams, and initially, if you think you're copper deficient, if you've been on a carnivore diet a long time, you can go up to 8 to 9 milligrams of copper per day. This is copper glycinate, and I think that's the only reasonable form to use. It usually comes as bisglycinate or glycinate. Either is fine. No point to go with the other ones because this is cheap, affordable. Copper can be replicated from quality plant foods as well as shellfish and seafood, but it's difficult to do that in the context of a natural diet. The next one that's probably necessary for most people is magnesium, and as with copper, this is in the form of magnesium glycinate. It's synergistic with vitamin D3, and since I was taking so much vitamin D3 throughout my tanning and supplementing, and I wasn't getting a lot of magnesium in my diet through quality wild plant foods, this is something I found that has helped a lot. It's something that you should be taking probably 400 to 500 milligrams of per day minimum. Some people might even have to go higher initially, up to 1,000 milligrams per day. But as with everything, start at a lower dose, taper up, and see how you feel. This next one has to do with performance more and testosterone. This is an unlabeled version of my male virility supplement on organ supplements. I'm going to get more of these, but we should have actual frozen testicles on Frankie's Free Range Meat soon. So what you would do is, if you're a male, you would get the testicles. If you're female, you can buy the fish eggs, the salmon roe that we have on Frankie's Free Range Meat, and you can use those for sexual performance. They have bioactive estrogen and testosterone correspondingly that will literally boost your own hormone levels if you take them consistently in a large enough amount. For this, the 6 capsules was fine. For a raw product, you probably want 30 to 40 grams of it per day. The B complex is more of a safety net. So a lot of the time people think that just because they're eating a lot of meat that they're getting all the B vitamins they need. Reality is there are a couple things missing. So what I suggest to a lot of people is you get a B vitamin complex from like Thorne or Pure Encapsulations, and you try it every day for about 2 weeks, see how you feel, get your B vitamin stores up. You should also get methylfolate, which is sold as methylfolate. That doesn't come in a B complex. And what I also suggest is biotin. There is biotin in the B complex, but biotin is a B vitamin that's mostly synthesized by your gut bacteria. So if you have gut issues, if you have dysbiosis, taking large amounts of biotin appears to be something that you should do. Honestly, I've been using this for only the past week, and I haven't noticed too much of a difference, but I'm going to try it for a little longer. On paper, it seems to make sense. And as with the biotin for gut issues, your gut also synthesizes vitamin K2. So vitamin K2 and biotin, 2 incredibly important nutrients you need to be supplementing to fix your gut. And this is from Thorne. This is about $70. We ran out of the one on organ supplements. I'm going to try to make one within a month or so, but this is generally expensive as vitamin K2 powder is something that's very, very expensive to make. So those are all the supplements I've been using currently. The biotin, I've been taking 10 milligrams per day. It's usually measured in micrograms, so it'll be 10,000 micrograms per day. The vitamin K2, I'm using like half a dropper, which is about 15 milligrams per day, probably a little more. Everything else, I already told you guys the dosage. I probably have some things here and there that you might consider supplements like iodine, vitamin D, boron, but nothing I've really used consistently. So the iodine is something that can go either way. If you take a large amount of iodine, it is antimicrobial, but iodine is absorbed very quickly by the body and toxic at antimicrobial doses. This says talisman only, keep away from children. There's actually some studies where children died from using solutions this concentrated. It's why on organ supplements I made a more realistic dosage. This is 7.5 milligrams of iodine per drop, which is like 140 times a realistic dose. You would normally get 150 micrograms from a portion of seafood. So that's what we have on organ supplements. That being said, this can be used temporarily to fix a deficiency. It can be used transdermally at a more reasonable absorption rate. And you guys can mess around with this. I don't really suggest it. I've done a video on iodine where you can learn more about that, but it's not something I use regularly. Honestly, I use the iodine more to wash my hands, and after I play with the dirty New York City girls, we use it down there. So let's move on to the antimicrobials and the enzymes. Now, first I'll just briefly touch on the broad spectrum enzyme supplements that I don't really use. If you have like a cheat meal, or if you eat way too much food, or if you're having stomach problems, these have a mixture of betaine HCl, which is for stomach acid, ox bile, which is to disperse the fat particles, papaya and pancreatin, as well as bromelain. Well, no, the papaya and the bromelain are the corrosive enzymes that help digest food. The pancreatin is the carbohydrate, the protein, and the fat digesting enzymes. And then we have a couple other things in here as well. This is very broad spectrum. And this is if you're eating a meal composed of fat, protein, and carbohydrates. And same with this one. And usually they even put like a lactase enzyme or sometimes a gluten degrading enzyme. But since most people are carnivore or they're following a really strict diet, you kind of want to pick and choose your enzymes depending on what you're eating. So this is TUDCA. It's made from bear bile. It basically removes fat from your liver. I haven't been taking this lately, but if you think you have fatty liver, if you think you have iron overload issues, this can help remove some of that fatty liver. So as a protective mechanism, when you have toxic levels of certain things in your body, your liver stores them as a fatty liver. This kind of prevents that. It's a basic aspect of a liver protocol, something that I might touch on in the future. There's a bunch of specific supplements that you would take for your liver, like arlipoic acid, there's selenium, milk thistle, MSM, a whole bunch of things for liver support, but not necessary in this case. The liver doesn't really need that stuff. You can try and see how it helps. I've noticed that the TUDCA is one of the most effective things. The NAC, the N-acetylcysteine, which is a precursor to glutathione, and NAC is a biofilm buster. It's important for breaking down the mucus in your stomach that is protecting any dysbiotic bacteria. So if you don't take NAC, if you don't take something that can break down the biofilm, enough enzymes, you won't remove whatever gut issues you're having. The enzymes that can help do that, you have proteolytic enzymes, protein digesting enzymes. This is trypsin and chymotrypsin that are made in the pancreas. These break down protein as it gets into the small intestine. This is betaine HCl with pepsin. Pepsin is the protein degrading enzyme in the stomach, and betaine HCl is for stomach acidity. So for protein digestion, you're kind of doing betaine HCl plus pepsin plus proteolytic enzymes. If you do consume fat, you definitely want a bit of lipase. I don't really use this that often because I don't need a lot of fat. And ox bile to disperse the fat particles. Again, if you're eating a lot of fat. So there are carbohydrate digesting enzymes that you can consume. I haven't really found them to be necessary, but the broad spectrum enzyme supplement is probably your best bet for that. So now to touch on the antimicrobials. This is probably what a lot of you guys want to see. So you need gelatin capsules because these oils and antimicrobials are so caustic that you can't really use them. Oh, actually I'm missing two things here. Let me run downstairs and grab some more. Very simply, antimicrobials are anti-life, antifungal, antibacterial. The reason they're better to use than antibiotics is because they don't completely destroy your gut, and you don't really have to take them consistently for 2-3 weeks. You don't have to worry about antibiotic resistance, and they are just as effective if used properly. So let me show you guys how to do this. Now you can buy certain antimicrobials like this one. This is a berberine complex from Integrative Therapeutics, which is very expensive. I do hope to make my own antimicrobial and enzyme supplements in the future. They're are really broad spectrum ones, like a Candida supplement, which will actually have 10 or 15 things that are used against Candida. You might have a parasite one that has 10 or 15 ingredients used against parasites, but I like using specific ones in large amounts, and then you can rotate through them so your gut bacteria doesn't get used to them. And this one has barberry, which is high in berberine, Oregon grape, as well as golden seal. These are 3 herbs that are very good against SIBO. So depending on the volume of food you're eating, depending on what your gut issues are, the dose will vary greatly. The recommended serving size here is 2 capsules. I usually use between 8 and 10 capsules if I'm having issues. For the proteolytic enzymes, I've been using between 5 and 10 of these. Not really sure how effective they are, to be honest, and they are very expensive, so I might stop using them. The betaine HCl, pepsin, and gentian bitters, I would start with 1 or 2 of these and work your way up to the point where you feel the stomach acidity. Ox bile, lipase, since we're not taking this because we don't have a lot of fat in the meal. N-acetylcysteine, I usually use 1 or 2 capsules. If you start smelling like sulfur in your bowel movements, then you know you're taking too much N-acetylcysteine. And you want to get all that stuff done first. You want to get every pill out you need before you start messing with the other antimicrobials that are in liquid, because these can break the gelatin capsule very quickly. So what you want to do is, within a minute or 2 of filling the gelatin capsule up with the antimicrobial, you want to consume it, otherwise the capsule might break while it's sitting there and spill all over the countertop. First antimicrobial, and the most basic and common one, is oregano oil. When you buy this, it's supposed to have a certain percent of carbochol, usually 80% plus. It's not too expensive. Oregano oil is very effective against the majority of bacteria, fungus. It just depends on the volume you take. So, someone with a very, very, very severe gut problem might have to take, 5, 6, 7, 8, a crazy amount of capsules of oregano oil to get the oregano oil to where it needs to go, which I definitely don't recommend, as you would have very crazy die-off reactions. What you really want to do here is just make sure to take enough of the effective minimum dose, and then eventually, over the course of 2, 3, 4 weeks, you'll clear out most of the bad bacteria, and then that consistent lower dose antimicrobial regimen is what will get you, fully clear of SIBO Candida, and then 3, 4, 5 weeks maintenance, and then you can start incorporating probiotic bacteria again. So we use a dropper for the oregano oil, and you guys can guess why I'm wearing gloves, because if you get this stuff on your hands, the smell is not coming off. If you get this stuff on the outside of the capsule and you miss a drop, throw out the gelatin capsule and do a new one, because you don't want this stuff touching your tongue or the inside of your mouth. So there's a lot of different antimicrobial oils: thyme oil, sage, clove, cinnamon, and they're all effective for different things. You want to try to get organic and high quality stuff that doesn't have any additives, where you can run into a lot of issues with these oils. But oregano oil is generally a safe bet to start with, and if you're not noticing a difference, if you're not getting a die-off reaction, you probably just have to taper up the dose. So the next 3 are just things I picked up at Whole Foods because I needed to grab some real quick. Usually I order stuff ahead of time online, but Whole Foods did happen to have 3 antimicrobials that are effective against certain things. And what I'll do with these 3 is I'll actually fill up a gelatin capsule 1/3 with each one. So I'll do 1/3 of black walnut, which is the hull of a black walnut, and this is very effective against parasites. So black walnut is generally antiparasitic. Uva ursi is an herb that's effective against SIBO. They actually make tea with this. You can buy uva ursi leaves and make tea, so this is just a concentrated extract. And wormwood is another antiparasitic. And black walnut and wormwood are antiparasitics, but they are also antimicrobial. Most of these are pretty broad spectrum, but some are more effective against certain things because they have more of a tannic content, really just more dangerous to consume in general. The main thing to keep in mind with these antimicrobial and enzyme protocols is you don't want to consume a lot of water or liquid with them. That's the worst thing you can do. A small amount of antimicrobials without water in your digestive system is very effective, but once you start adding water to the digestive system, that's where you might need to take 5 to 10 times the amount of antimicrobials just to churn them up. So that being said, as you consume these with or before your meal, then they will churn with that food in your stomach, and you're basically going to have a bunch of food flowing through your digestive system that the bacteria isn't going to eat, and you're going to be able to absorb with your small intestine. So what I suggest you guys do is get some drink that you like, maybe a little bit of raw milk, some raw juice, I don't know, choose something, and you would swallow all of these pills down at once. If you have gut issues, if you're taking antimicrobial protocol, it's very likely that you can't follow a carnivore diet because you need a high volume of food in your stomach and some fiber to get things moving really quickly to pass the antimicrobials through consistently. And there are a bunch of other antimicrobials and things you can take, as I've mentioned several times. They have pure berberine extract. They have things like grapeseed extract, black seed oil. There's so many different ones, and I do go over different types of antimicrobials if necessary when I give people protocols, but this is the very basic, and this is what gets most people fixed. And the bigger part about this is finding the right dose, making sure the gut motility is high, addressing the underlying issue, and then if you do this antimicrobial protocol for 3, 4, 5 weeks, maybe a little longer than that, and then you're able to introduce probiotic bacteria, that would hypothetically fix you unless you didn't address the underlying issue. So thank you guys for joining me today. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below, and I'll try to get back to you guys as soon as possible.